All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Stephen Reichley. He's an internationally recognized expert in aquatic health and food security. He's an assistant professor at Mississippi State University's College of Veterinary Medicine in the Department of Pathobiology and Population Medicine. He serves as the associate director of the MSU Global Center for Aquatic Health and Food Security. He's head of the FAO Reference Center on Antimicrobial Resistance and Aquaculture Biosecurity, a co-PI and deputy director of the USAID-funded Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Fish, and manager of the Gulf Coast Aquatic Health Program. In addition to these roles, and I don't know how he fits it all in, he's also involved in diagnostics, research, and teaching at MSU. Dr. Reichley is also a certified aquatic veterinarian and adjunct assistant professor at Ohio State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And he's extensive experience in the culture of many aquatic species throughout the United States and abroad, having worked in an impressive 19 different countries. He has numerous scientific publications related to aquatic health and has given lectures and seminars throughout the world for veterinarians, veterinary students, and those working in aquaculture. Dr. Reichley is a past president of the World Aquatic Veterinary Medical Association and has previously served as a director at large for the American Association of Fish Veterinarians. He's a member of the American Fishery Society Fish Health Section, where he is the current chair of the Technical Standards Committee and serves as a member of the Executive Committee. So with all that, thank you very much, Dr. Reichley, for presenting today. We're looking forward to your talk.
Thanks so much, Nick. Really appreciate it. And thanks to Megan and Matt as well for the invite to speak today and to the Fish Health section. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my journey in aquatic animal health, and then touch a little bit on opportunities that there are in fish health for those of you maybe who are interested in getting into the field or exploring the field more. So thank you very much. And yeah, I'll definitely have time at the end for some questions and hope to have a good discussion. And thanks to everybody for joining, and it's been a fantastic time this year, as in previous years, listening to all these different seminar series and everybody who's presenting. It's been absolutely phenomenal and very humbling to hear all the students presenting their research and seeing everything that they're doing and how much they're doing. It certainly puts things in perspective and makes me feel as though maybe I'm not quite working hard enough and didn't work that hard as a PhD student. So yes, with that, I want to talk a little bit about, I'll start out with talking about my journey in aquatic animal health, and then finish up with some opportunities. So my journey in aquatic animal health actually started in a very interesting way. It started with horses. So that's probably not a common thing. So I actually just, riding horses and many people may not know this about me, but I actually used to stadium jump horses. And so through that experience is really where I had my first interaction with a veterinarian. And that's where I developed my interest in veterinary medicine and passion for veterinary medicine, working with the vet, taking care of the horses and doing everything with him. And then that kind of evolved into some shadowing opportunities and some employment opportunities as a veterinary assistant, particularly in small animal general practice, but then also with surgeons and board certified surgeons. So that really is where my passion continued to grow, and said, okay, this is what I think I want to do. So when I was fortunate enough to get accepted into Ohio State College of Veterinary Medicine, when you start vet school, everybody, the $1 million question they ask you is, so what is it you want to do when you graduate? What is your ultimate goal? And so when I started vet school, my answer would have been, either small animal GP or be an orthopedic surgeon and go that direction. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do. I had tried in undergrad to keep some fish as pets. The pet shop, when I got the fish, they had a 7-day guarantee on the fish. But after about the 4th or 5th time of taking the fish back to the pet store because it kept dying on me, I realized maybe pet fish keeping was not for me. I've since learned that fish need oxygen and food, and so that's really important. But back in the undergrad, I didn't really appreciate that, and so got into vet school thinking that that's what I wanted to do, is small animal GP or orthopedic surgery. So that was the direction I was headed. And so I was sitting in class one day, and this word came up on a slide in a lecture that had to do with contemporary issues in food animal medicine. Admittedly, I had never heard of the word aquaculture before, had no idea what it meant, and really wasn't sure what I was going to be doing there, but it kind of piqued my interest. And so then I started looking into it and reading more about it, and quite frankly, just Googling, and started realizing that aquaculture at the time was the fastest growing sector of agriculture in the world. And again, we've been hearing throughout veterinary school that agricultural production needs to increase in order to meet the demand for protein and for food around the world. And so you say, okay, agriculture production needs to increase, and aquaculture is the fastest growing form of that. This starts to look kind of interesting and pique my interest. At the same time, I was looking at some statistics about pet fish in the United States, and realized, or pets in the United States, and realized that fish were the most owned pet in the US, and third by household, which isn't surprising because most people, if they have pet fish, they probably have multiple fish. And so that obviously drives the numbers up. And then you start also looking at research and people that are doing different research on obviously diseases of aquatic organisms, but also human diseases and diseases of other animals, and seeing that fish are really taking off and being more and more utilized for different disease models at research institutions. And so because of that, then there's a need for that expertise to make sure those fish are healthy to be able to do the research in, or for people directly to do the research with. And then at the same time, started looking at zoos and aquaria around the US, and seeing that more of them are increasing their collection of aquatic animals, or they're increasingly utilizing veterinary involvement in those collections. And particularly as more bird certifications and other certifications came out, they were seeking individuals who had an expertise or experience with aquatic animals. And so as I was kind of Googling and looking at all that, I started realizing, wow, there may be a career path, and there may be an opportunity in aquatic health, something that I had never considered before. And again, kind of dabbled a little bit with some pet fish, and really, quite frankly, was unsuccessful with that. So because of that, I was fortunate to have a friend of mine who went to undergrad with in vet school, and his father was the state vet for Ohio. So I said, hey, ask your dad if there's any fish vets I can ride along with and see what they do. There weren't, but they had just started a aquaculture division for the Ohio Department of Agriculture. So my first summer break of vet school, worked for Ohio Department of Ag. And really that was in the newly formed aquaculture division. There was an aquaculture coordinator. And just started working with the farmers in Ohio, getting a census of who was there, what they were raising, what systems they were using. So it's mostly all small farms, a lot of pond-based farms with some recirculating aquaculture systems as well. And so I spent my first summer just kind of delving into aquaculture and learning about it in the context of Ohio and Ohio producers. So after that, I said, well, that seems kind of interesting. Let me look more into it, and started Googling and looking at things. And that's where I came across Dr. Koo, looking at just in the US and learning more about the US industry, realizing catfish was #1, and Mississippi was the #1 producer. And I knew Mississippi had a vet school because I had applied there and was unsuccessful at even getting an interview, but realizing that they did some work with the catfish industry. And so I reached out to Dr. Koo, who was very generous in allowing me to come down for an externship. So my second summer break of vet school, went down to Mississippi State and spent about a month at the Thad Cochran National Warm Water Aquaculture Center, working with Dr. Koo in the diagnostic lab. And then when I wasn't doing diagnostics, Matt Griffin had offered to let me come into his lab, and he was very generous in allowing me to teach me molecular techniques and PCR stuff and things that he does, all his fancy high-powered stuff that he does in his lab. So that's where I got to know Matt, and working with him on things for that first half of that second summer break. And then in the meantime, I had come across Doug Munson at Idaho Fish and Game. And so Doug had offered to let me come out to Idaho and work with him for the second half of that summer break. So after my time with Lester and Matt in the Delta, moved out to Idaho and worked for Idaho Fish and Game for about 8 weeks with Doug. And so in those 8 weeks, we traveled about 9,000 miles on the state rig throughout the state of Idaho. So that was primarily doing disease surveillance work in the Chinook salmon spawning system that they had there, and doing things there, but then also doing diagnostics for outbreaks that they had. So it was really a neat summer because I got to work kind of in the big industry, if you will, with catfish. But then also on the kind of conservation side of things with Doug in Idaho. So it was kind of a really neat opportunity for me. And at that point said, okay, I think this is what I want to do for a career, and something I might want to look at. So at that point in time, as I entered my fourth year, my clinical year at Ohio State, they had just started a new curriculum that they called Career Areas of Emphasis, which essentially allowed you to pick if you want to do small animal, large animal, equine, or other. So I fell into the other side of things, looking at aquatic animal health. And so basically what that allowed me to do is schedule externships for about half of my senior year was off-site. So instead of doing some of the more traditional rotations with cardiology or some of those other dermatology, some of those other ologies that most other vet students would do as part of their rotations, I went off-site and did externships, primarily focused on fish health. And so the first one, after about a 1-2 week rotation in clinical year, I left and went to Norway. This was my first time ever traveling international. Picked up and went abroad for 3 months of externships, not knowing anybody who I was going to be working with, and traveling by myself. So I had found Norway just in the same sense at the time. I was looking online, realizing most of the world's salmon at that time came from Norway. And Norway's got a vet school. So I reached out to the vet school, similar to like what I did at Mississippi State, and was very fortunate to be accepted to join them and their vet students on one of their fish health rotations that they have with Trigby Popa. And so I did that. And then as I was planning for that, Oscar Oistvik at Hasbrook Geniston, a very large consulting company for the salmon industry, reached out and said, hey, I heard you're going to be in Norway, would you come spend some time with me? So I was able to split my time between an academic institution with the vet students, but also a private company doing things. So spent a lot of time out on sea. My first time going out to one of the fish farms, they said, hey, do you get seasick? And I said, I have no idea. I've never really been on a boat for any respectable amount of time in my life. So that was just a learning opportunity there. And obviously the water there is very cold. So we had the full body suits on and life preservers and everything like that. But spent a couple weeks in Norway and really just getting to visit a lot of the farms, getting to do some necropsies and just learning more about the salmon industry, how their production cycle was and those things. And so when I wrapped that up, I was fortunate to be able to line up a month-long externship in Scotland. So Jimmy Turnbull at University of Stirling was very generous in putting together a 4-week externship with me at the university. So doing some working with some of their researchers in fish health, fish nutrition, and other projects that they had, but also allowing me to spend some time with the Scottish government, the Fish Health Inspectorate. So learning kind of the regulatory side of fish health and seeing how they deal with diseases within the country, but also transboundary diseases and biosecurity and the like. And so spent some time in the regulatory side, and then also spent some time, he arranged for a couple of weeks with the Fish Vet Group, doing diagnostics and visiting farms on behalf of Fish Vet Group. So it was really an interesting time for me and getting to see more again on the salmon side, on the trout side. So got to go out and inspect well boats and do biosecurity audits, I got to work at Howeytown Fish Hatchery, one of the oldest fish farms in Scotland, and learning how you size sort trout, why you size sort trout, and getting some kind of hands-on time with the fish, which was pretty interesting for me, to kind of see that, be able to do that, but also be able to do kind of the regulatory side and the academic side as well. So after I finished up my time in Scotland, I went over to Ireland. My family is Irish, and I always wanted to go to Ireland, so I was just Googling, trying to find fish vets in Ireland, and came across Dr. Hamish Roger, who was very nice to allow me to come over to spend some time with him and his company, Vet Aqua International, at the time. And so I spent 2 weeks with Hamish, and really got to travel. I think in the 2 weeks that I was with Hamish, we were in, I think, 10 counties throughout Ireland. So we got a lot of windshield time, visiting farms, spent some time out at sea, but also was able to spend some time in the lab. And this was kind of my first foray into pathology, into fish pathology. And so getting to spend some time at the microscope and do some histology and pathology on aquatic animals, which those of you who know me now know I have absolutely no skill in that. But it was certainly it was a good first exposure to learn that and get some experience there. So when I wrapped up my time with Hamish, I was fortunate to be able to line up an externship with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. So after my time in Ireland, I went down to Italy. I'm not sure how it happened, and to this day, I'll tell Ohio State that there must have been a scheduling snafu, but had a couple of about a week and a half before the 2 externships of downtime, so I was able to take advantage of that to do some sightseeing in France and then Switzerland, and then took the train from Zurich down to Italy, which was a really nice opportunity to see a little bit of the world while I was out doing these externships. So in Italy, I was very fortunate to be able to work with Dr. Melba Riantasso. So she was very generous in allowing me to come over there and spend a month in Rome. So there were a lot of different events that happened. I kind of timed it right, unbeknownst to me, timed the externship right to be there during the COFI, the Committee on Fisheries, and also the Codex Alimentarius meetings. So I was able to be there, and that was really my first exposure to, traditionally when I think of veterinary medicine and my time in the clinics before, the client was an owner of an animal, and that was the interaction that you had. And in this case, the clients were basically countries, were member states of the UN. And so that was really interesting to me, really eye-opening for me, and did a lot of kind of work on transboundary aquatic diseases on the finfish side, crustacean side, and some of the shellfish side, looking at those different diseases and biosecurity and what those look like and the different regulations between the different member states. So that was a pretty neat opportunity for me. And then while I was there, I also was able to give a couple presentations to some groups on aquatic health and talking a little bit about aquatic health globally, but more specifically what we do in the United States and those kind of things. And so there's a group that meets every day there, the Global Early Warning System, that's kind of FAO, WHO, WOAH, all those different organizations that look at kind of be the first people to identify when there's an issue, whether it be human health, animal health, or so on. And so got to also give some presentations to that group. So folks who, really strong experts in their fields, but maybe have never been exposed to aquatics before. And so was able to kind of share with them the very little that I know about aquatic and aquatic animal health. So that was a really interesting time for me, and something that helped shape my thought process and my perspectives. After that, I came back stateside and had to do some externships back in the clinic at Ohio State. But my next offsite rotation was at Clear Springs. So when I worked with Doug at Idaho Fish and Game, he made a connection with me with Clear Springs Foods, which at the time was the largest producer of freshwater rainbow trout in the world. So set up an externship with them. So I spent a month back in Idaho, Buell, Idaho there, and worked in their R&D department under Scott LaPatra, and worked at several of the farms. So it was nice because Scott made sure that I had time working on the farms, out in the raceways with the fish, but also some time in the lab. And so it was a nice mix to be able to do both of those. And then after that, I went back to Ohio State, did a couple other externships. Actually spent some time, did an externship in the swine industry at Carthage Veterinary Services, and I was very purposeful about being able to do that, because as I was looking at aquaculture and the industries, and comparing that to other animal agriculture industries, really wanted to spend some time in what I would call kind of a mature industry with the swine industry, and seeing how they do things, seeing how they approach husbandry, how they produce production, how they approach health, and being able to see what those are, and maybe be able to take some of those lessons and apply them in aquaculture. And then I was also able and very fortunate to be able to set up 2 externships with USDA. So I spent one of those was down in Ruskin with Dr. Kathleen Hartman, and the other was in Washington, D.C. with Janet Whaley. So those of you who know Kathleen, her office is at the Tropical Aquaculture Lab. So many people probably on this call here have done an externship at Tropical Aquaculture Lab with Roy. I can't claim that I've done that, so I've not had the pleasure of completing an externship with Roy and Debbie, but I like to think that I was there. I was there peripherally. I was doing my externship with Kathleen, but was around, and Roy and Deb were very nice to letting me come in the lab and spend a little bit of time with them and see what they do there. So spent some time there at Tropical Aquaculture Lab. Most of that was going out to farms and doing sampling with Kathleen for import-export type regulatory work. And then also did a biosecurity audit of the Tropical Aquaculture Lab while I was there as well. So when it was all said and done, I think it was something like 6 countries and 4 or 5 different states that I got to do my externships in for my senior year of veterinary school. And so that, I think, really helped me understand aquatic animal health, or begin to understand, I should say, aquatic animal health, understand the nuances, the similarities, the differences throughout different organizations, different countries, academia, regulatory, private practice. And so it was a really a wonderful, well-rounded opportunity for me to do that. And I said, okay, this is great. This is a career path that I want to do. And so that's really kind of, now I had to sit and say, okay, what do I want to do next? I'm finished my clinical year. I'm graduating vet school. Where do I want to go, and what do I want to do? And I was very fortunate that as I was finishing up vet school, Lester and Matt reached back out and said, hey, why don't you come down here and do a PhD? So when I had worked in Matt's lab before, I mentioned he had introduced me to PCR. I was doing some PCRs. He gave me some primers and some genomic DNA, and said, hey, go run these primers and do these PCRs, and this is what the results are going to be. And I remember the results they weren't working. I couldn't get any bands from the PCR. I couldn't run the gel, couldn't get any bands. And Matt chalked it up as a vet student who had never done molecular before, and doesn't really know what he's doing. And that's how I chalked it up too. I said, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing. But that was kind of at the time, we didn't realize it, but that was, we were running PCRs for Edwards-Yellow tarda, realizing that was really Edwards-Yellow piscicida. So that was kind of at that pivotal moment of recognizing there was a new pathogen that was impacting the catfish industry. And so Matt was offered to let me come back down and work in his lab. So I did that. So after vet school, I came down to Mississippi State, and again, knowing that catfish is a #1 industry in the U.S. and Mississippi is the #1 producer, and I wanted to do aquatic health. It was a natural fit. Plus, it was just icing on the cake to be able to work with Lester and Matt, since I had worked with them before and gotten along very well with them. So I joined the faculty of the Aquatic Teaching and Diagnostic Service. So worked with, did some research in aquatic health, and really Matt took me under his wing and taught me everything I know about research. And I think that was really helpful for me to see, the applied approach that he takes to his research program. Did some teaching for the vet students in aquatic animal health, and then also worked in the diagnostic lab here at Starkville. Dr. Larry Hansen was very generous in allowing me to do some diagnostics in the lab in Starkville, but then also Lester let me do stuff out in Stoneville, and then worked on my PhD under Matt to be able to advance that and get another degree, I guess, out of it. So as I was wrapping up the PhD, Clear Springs had reached out to me and said they were having some biological issues and challenges, and so they had never had a veterinarian on staff before, and they had asked if I'd be willing to come out and work with them and help them. So when I finished up the PhD, I moved out to Idaho and started out as the director of fish health for Clear Springs. So Clear Springs, at the time, we were the largest producer of freshwater rainbow trout in the U.S. It was a little over 300 employees, 100% employee-owned organization, totally vertically integrated. If you're not familiar with them, they have their own brood stock locations, production farms, feed mill, processing plant, and then a fleet of refrigerated trucks to distribute product twice a week, fresh and frozen, throughout the United States. So we did about 20 million pounds of trout a year. So it was a pretty large operation. Started out director of fish health, so responsible for the health of all those animals. And then about a year into it, they rolled the R&D activities under my portfolio. So did all the R&D activities, directed the diagnostic and research lab, and also directed the water quality and analytical lab. So we were doing research on, this is internal and external research. We had wonderful collaborators. Many of you are listening in today, and so really appreciate all those collaborations, getting to work with them. We also started up a contract research component. So we were doing research for folks, and then kind of outside of that research arm, was still responsible for the clinical health. So we had a team of fish health technicians that were really the folks that were doing the necropsies, doing the exams, making the diagnosis and looking at things. And so so that was something that was really helpful for me, and then that, basically responsible for the health and welfare of those animals. Is a pretty large operation. We sold that company in January of 2020. So sold that in 2020 and spent 2020 hanging out in my house in Idaho, trying to figure out what my next step was going to be. And that's when Mississippi State came back and said, hey, we'd love for you to join us and come back to Mississippi State. We've had some changes and some growth since you left. So in August of 2020, came back to Mississippi State. I was faculty in the College of Veterinary Medicine, but also working in our Global Center for Aquatic Health and Food Security. So in that capacity now, I serve as the associate director for the Global Center for Aquatic Health and Food Security, and then an assistant professor in the Department of Pathobiology and Population Medicine. So I wear a lot of different hats, which is a wonderful thing for me to have the diversity of that I get to experience. And so when I get tired of one thing, I can move on to something else. But yeah, so in that, we most of my time now is on the service side of things. I've got a small research and a small teaching component as well. But on the service side, I serve as the deputy director of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Fish. That's a USAID project or program where we administer grants and awards, working with U.S. institutions and in-country institutions with the ultimate goal of reducing poverty, improving human nutrition through the inclusiveness of fish and fish products. We also have the Marine Mammal Sea Turtle Conservation Recovery and Monitoring Program down the coast, where we do sea turtle and dolphin work. And we have some faculty that are stationed down there. At the time when I first came back, I was managing the collaboration that we have with UN FAO. Just recently, we were given that designation of a reference center for antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture biosecurity. So I head that up. And then, yeah, in addition to that, I still am a diagnostician. We have 5 diagnosticians that rotate through on the diagnostic service in the aquatic lab. So I'm one of those 5 and provide diagnostic service in our lab here. I do some teaching to the veterinary students, a little bit of independent research that I have, and then a lot of outreach through that. So when you look at kind of what a lot of my role now is focused on food security and responsible aquatic resource management. So I mentioned that we have the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Fish, and what that's doing in the last 5 years, we've awarded 24 different awards, primarily in Africa and Asia, and again, focused on alleviating poverty and improving human nutrition through inclusiveness of fish and fish products. So when we talk about nutrition, we talk about human nutrition. We also talk about aquatic animal nutrition. This portfolio spans aquaculture and fisheries. So we get to work with really a wide range of experts and researchers throughout the aquatic resource sector side of things. I mentioned we also have the Marine Mammal Sea Turtle Conservation Recovery Monitoring Program. That's part of our Gulf Coast Aquatic Health Program that we have. And so that program really is focused on bolstering the capacity within Mississippi for marine mammal and sea turtle stranding network, improving the response that we have for injured and dead animals, improving necropsy response and data collection of those animals that we can then use to make better management actions and decisions here in the state of Mississippi, but also throughout the Mississippi Sound and in the Gulf of Mexico. And then we also have a variety of other research activities and projects. And really this global center, what we do at Mississippi State is we serve as the conduit for faculty who are interested in getting engaged in aquatic health research, aquatic health service, aquatic health outreach, both domestically, but also internationally. And so if there's faculty who are interested in doing that, we try to pair them up with different researchers or different collaborators, both in the US, but then also international, and use that network to be able to put them in touch with folks and to help foster those relationships that really help drive the university's mission as a land grant institution. So we've got some projects in the Republic of Georgia with fish health and helping particularly their trout farmers learn more about fish health, improving production. Like I mentioned, we have that reference center. So there's now 5 reference centers on AMR and aquaculture biosecurity. So 2 in China, 1 in India, 1 in the UK, and then us in the United States. And so we just had the virtual launch in November, and last month I was in Italy for the physical launch of those centers. And so those of you who are listening in, I know many people do a lot of research on AMR here in the US. We'd be very interested in having conversations to see, how we can help you, how we can help make those connections, and what resources we can provide you for your activities there. So that's something that we're really excited about, something that's just now starting to take off, and we're at the beginning of. And then obviously on the marine side, I already talked about what we do there, several different grants that we have on the marine side. So my role requires a lot of travel, something I never really thought about before, but just for those of you, I guess, who are interested in aquatic health, and I put this in here because I don't think that it's just sitting in one place and doing things. And so yeah, last year I flew over 100,000 miles, spent a lot of time, so that's over 10 days just being in the air. Was visited a lot of different airports in many different countries. And so this year I just got back Sunday from Kenya. So I've been in 17 countries already this year with things. So hopefully I'll be back in Mississippi for a little bit of time now to be able to rest and recover from the travel. But there's certainly opportunities international as well in aquatic animal health. There's a lot of those. So when you think about different opportunities, don't limit yourself to just the United States. So speaking of opportunities, let me shift a little bit to talk some about career opportunities in aquatic animal health. And as I was thinking about how I can talk about this, certainly I can talk and say, hey, here's some of the opportunities and raise awareness. But I would be remiss if I didn't recognize everybody who's joining us today. We've got a large group of people here today, and there's no way I can be all encompassing to cover every single opportunity there is. And so I know at the beginning, Nick asked everybody to kind of, we always put the introductions in and where we're from and those kind of things. But I thought maybe what would be really interesting and particularly helpful for maybe some students or folks that are early in career to be thinking about what opportunities may be out there and recognizing the vast array of different opportunities that would be out there. Maybe take a time for those of you who are, have a job and are working, maybe put in your job title in the chat and what type of role that is, whether that be federal, state, local, tribal, if you're academia, private, NGO. So maybe it's a good way for those that are sitting back kind of looking at what opportunities may be. I think it'd be really cool for them to see in that chat there, maybe some of the different job titles, because I think sometimes too people get focused on aquatic health or technician or veterinarian or diagnostician or whatever those kind of buzzwords or roles that they traditionally think of, but they don't necessarily realize that there's a lot of different opportunities out there and the diversity of roles. So if you would bear with me and maybe put in your job title and where you work, what category you fall under, I think that'd be really cool for people. I know if I were a student listening in to be able to see what those different job titles are. So I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my screen. So hopefully someone has started us off and other people are joining in and adding those. And I appreciate your participation with that because I think that would be really, really helpful. So I'll do my best as we go through the next couple of slides here. Because again, I want to leave time for questions and answers. But just do my best to highlight some of the different opportunities and the diversity of opportunities. So certainly thinking about the federal government in many countries have a lot of different opportunities for folks that do aquatic health. And people may focus on maybe USDA or something like that, or the veterinary services side or the aquatic health side of things, but recognizing that there's other federal agencies that hire aquatic health folks as well at many different levels. So there's a lot of different opportunities in the federal government for folks to get engaged, and there's a lot of great career opportunities on the federal side. Similarly, there's opportunities throughout the states as well. So states and tribal and local governments, they all hire folks that are working again at a lot of different levels in aquatic health. And so obviously I can't list every single state here or tribe that's here. But again, just to give you the idea and the perception that there's a lot of different opportunities, and it's really throughout the United States. Whether it be doing research, doing diagnostics. So the types of activities that there are, you'll find at all these different levels throughout that. And there's some benefits and some pros and cons to all these different types of organizations to work with. But suffice it to say, I think what the important thing is if you have a desire or an interest in that, you can follow your passion with that. Certainly on the academic side of things, we have plenty of opportunities here at Mississippi State. We're looking for folks now. So no, I'm just kidding. I put that on there, but really there's a lot of different academic institutions. And again, I can't list all of them. I just picked a variety of ones kind of representing different geographical spread throughout the US. There's a lot of careers in academia, right? And those careers could be, research careers. Those careers could be diagnostic careers. So again, if you want to do regulatory stuff, we looked at federal, we looked at state. There's a lot of different things. You can work in a lab, you can work in a field, you can work in an office. So really, the world is your oyster, as they say, and there's a lot of different opportunities for that. And then there's also on the private NGO, nonprofit side, whatever you want to lump those into, there's a lot of different opportunities there as well. And these organizations look for folks that are trained in aquatic health, or that have an interest in aquatic health, or want to practice aquatic health. Again, whether it be diagnostics, whether it be helping producers identify solutions to their problems and providing those solutions to them, doing research to be able to address questions and issues that producers have, or hatcheries have, or whatever. So there's just so many different opportunities, and I think that's really the take home message is, if you have an interest in fish health, you may have experienced it in a certain capacity. So a lot of times with the vet students, they come into vet school, their experience with veterinary medicine is in a small animal clinic. And so they think that's the only thing that veterinarians can do. If your experience with fish health has been, in a research setting, there's certainly a lot of opportunities on the research side, but there's many, many, many other opportunities outside of that. And don't limit yourself to that. And that's where, I think looking at some resources, obviously AFS has a wonderful career center. And so if you're looking at what opportunities may be out there, or you're kind of curious, hey, what careers could be out there, peruse the career center. Go take a look and see, look at the different job titles, look at the different types of organizations that are hiring, and spend a half hour looking at that, and hopefully you'll recognize the diversity that's out there. Another great job board that I particularly like and have used and help people find jobs at, but certainly post our jobs to, the Texas A&M, the Natural Resources Job Board, is a pretty robust place as well to look for things. So I encourage you, if you're just starting out early career, or maybe you're in a bachelor's degree and you're looking at maybe going into a job or going into a graduate degree, take a look, spend some time perusing these and see what's out there. And I think that'll open up your eyes to the different diversity of positions that are there. So finally, just want to end with some of what my thoughts are on kind of keys for success in aquatic health, but quite frankly, it really could span much broader than that. And those are, I think, working hard. There's no substitute for hard work. There's no substitute for putting time and effort and energy in. And I think that's something that you have to recognize. And particularly the fish health field is a pretty small field, and most of us all know each other, and I think that's important to put in that work and work hard. But at the same time, that's not enough, and that's not really the only thing. You also need to work smart, right? And being efficient, understand, work smarter, and being able to incorporate different tools and resources that you have to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Network. This is a wonderful opportunity. This seminar series and the fish health section has mixers and everything else, and the meeting coming up. Network, get to know people, and hopefully, if you're sitting here looking at opportunities, hopefully people are putting stuff in the chat of their career, their job title, and what they work. And if that's someone that say, hey, I've never heard anything like this before, I'm not really sure what it is you do, reach out to that person. Right? You know their name now. If you don't have their email, Google them, figure out something, network, reach out to them. Almost everyone's willing to talk about themselves and to tell you their story. And so I encourage you to reach out to folks, network, get to know people, and collaborate with folks. And that's really where you're going to learn about the different opportunities that are out there. Have fun as you do it. Right? You need to make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, and don't forget to have fun as you go along and work hard and work smart and networking and all that. Have fun. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy most about the aquatic health community, is that we do have fun. Ask the question. If there's something you need or something you want, ask. Okay. The worst people can do is say no, and you're in the same spot you're in now. So ask the question, hey, what do you do? Are there opportunities in this field? Are there opportunities in your lab? Are there opportunities at your organization for me to work and contribute to? Ask those questions. Don't be shy, and don't be afraid to ask. And finally, follow your passion. When you follow your passion and you're doing what you enjoy and what you love, that's when you're going to be the most successful. So follow your passion and find what that is. Recognize your passion is going to change as you traverse life. But always follow your passion, always do what you enjoy. So with that, happy to take any questions now or in the future. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out. via email. You can find me on social media. Happy to answer any questions anybody has. And Nick, I'll turn it back over to you if folks have questions now or in the future. Happy to answer anything. Thank you all very much for your attention, and thanks again for the opportunity today.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Reichley. I'm glad we have this recorded, and it's going to be a must-watch for folks starting their careers out. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask Dr. Reichley directly.
Hey, I'll jump in real quick, Nick, before anyone else does. Stephen, thanks a bunch again for doing this. I know fitting this into your schedule is tough with all the run around you do. So we really appreciate you helping out. One thing I thought, and that's always impressed me, is, and you show that map of all the places you went, in as a vet student, as an extern, etc. And it was extremely diverse, and it was global in its scope. And for folks that are interested in that, I guess, how did you find those opportunities? How did you lock those in? Is there, where would, if somebody was interested in following that path, how would you guide them in that journey, or how to accomplish that?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, quite frankly, what I did was just Google places and look for, hey, like I said, I mean, I always wanted to travel to Ireland. So I looked at Ireland, looked at, fish vets in Ireland, and really cold emailed people and said, hey, I'm interested in, I'm a vet student interested in fish health. Do you take externs? So I think, being proactive about it, you kind of choose your own destiny, and you're responsible for, you're your own best advocate. So I think doing that is wonderful. But I did that because I didn't have the network that I have now. I wasn't involved with the fish health section. I didn't necessarily know it existed, right? I wasn't involved with AFV or WAVMA or those other organizations. And so I think I didn't have you, right? Matt, when I was a graduate student, talk to Matt and say, hey, he's my major professor. Who do you have working in these other countries, or what collaborators do you have? And so I think it really goes back to, driving it, but also using your network and using your resources that you have. And not being afraid, again, to ask the question and just reach out to people. The fish health community is a pretty tight-knit community. We're all, pretty eager and willing to show what we do to other people. So I think that's really, I guess, the best way I would say is reach out to folks, take advantage of the opportunities that are there, network at these conferences, the section meeting, coming up, or other AFS meetings. Like, if you go and you participate, don't let your participation just be, I'm going to go give a talk, right? Go to the mixers, talk to people. Don't be afraid to go up and introduce yourself. And really, like I said, I mean, yeah, it's a great diversity. I showed whatever that was, those 6 countries, those dozen different opportunities. What I didn't say was I probably reached out to 50 different people, right? And I was told no a lot too, and I didn't let the no's deter me. I just kept going, and so eventually I cast a wide net, and I was fortunate to be able to have a small number of opportunities that actually came through, and I was able to participate in.
Stephen, I'll ask the same question, but the opposite direction. What can we do as professionals to help connect with students or share opportunities, either as individuals, through our institutions or associations?
Yeah, Nick, I appreciate that. I think it's a really good question, because that's something that, I think that, again, I struggle, quite frankly, a little bit, because I want the students to be able to have the desire to do it, right? So they have to kind of take that initiative and do that. And that speaks volumes to me by them doing it. But at the same time, not everybody knows about it. Not everybody has the same resources. And so I think as professionals, engaging in something like this, right? And in being able to say, hey, here I am, this is what I do, being able to take advantage, hopefully, I know there's limited spots for the seminar series, but it's a great opportunity for students to share their network. But I think it's also a great platform for professionals to be able to give a short talk and say, this is what I do, and I'm happy to set up a 30-minute Zoom call if someone wants to reach out to me, to answer those questions. If you're a faculty member at an institution that's doing research, and you have an opportunity to engage students, and being able to say, hey, I'm going to get, money in the budget or whatever of grants to be able to, pull students along for some of these activities. And I do some of this international work, I build in the budget for travel for students. And you know, some of these students, they're not graduate students or they've never had an experience before, but that's their first exposure, is to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go, you know, help with this research project. And so I think it's just from a professional standpoint, being open and willing to answer questions and to reach out to people, but it's also taking it one step further and being proactive about it. Because oftentimes when you think about it, it's easy for us as professionals to say, sure, I can answer a question, but think back to when we were students and we might have been intimidated, right? Like, Nick, you're so successful. I remember when I first met you, and you know, those who know Nick, he's much taller than I am. He's a very intimidating person, right? And so it's like, man, I don't necessarily want to, I don't want to go to Nick and ask a question, but Nick, knowing that he's receptive to it. And I think, you know, when we first met, it was, you know, you came up and introduced yourself. I mean, you know, it was an outgoing type situation, and that allowed me to feel comfortable, you know, to ask you for advice and those kind of things. And so I think a lot of it's just making ourselves available and making it less intimidating for the students to maybe to approach us.
Awesome. So, Stephen, you have a question here that came into the chat from John Drennan. You mentioned a lot of top leaders in the fish health field during your presentation. Is there a single individual that really got your passion focused on fish health in the community?
John, you're trying to get me in trouble by picking one individual, huh? I see how that is. I honestly, I can't say that there's a single individual that really did. I think if I look back at early on, what really sparked the interest and really fostered it for me, again, early on, that kind of got me interested, and there's been so many along the way. But really, that the experience that I had with Dr. Koo and Dr. Griffin at Mississippi State, and their openness and reception to me as a vet student who had no experience and background in aquatic health, for them to be able to open their arms and allow me to come in and do things, and then the networking that they've opened up for me and people they've connected me to, that was probably some of the most formative relationships. But then again, along the way, been supported by so many others and expanded, you know, the network with so many other opportunities and individuals. So I'm gonna John pressed me to say something, so I'll name those two, probably because they were early on and very formative to me, to be able to get into the field to begin with.
Excellent. Matthew, you have a question?
Yeah, hey, that was a really cool talk. I really enjoyed that. They gave me a lot of like confidence in my future career, because I want to go into like international travel and research after my master's. But I was really wondering if you guys have any idea of opportunities and things like One Health, like an international aquaculture work, because the master's thesis that I'm working on right now, I'm looking at how fish play a role into the disease system of Buruli ulcer. It's like a tropical disease, and I really want to like do work like that after I graduate after I graduate from my master's. So I was wondering if you have any ideas of like the career field with One Health and fish and aquaculture and things like that.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that. It's a timely question, because we're doing a lot at Mississippi State. We have had a really long standing strong program in aquatics and on just the veterinary side as well. So there's a lot of drive right now for One Health, and there's a lot of opportunities that we have here at Mississippi State. But there's also a lot of opportunities elsewhere. And so I guess what I would say to you, sure, there's probably, I can think of some concrete examples. You know, please reach out to me, send me an email. Happy to point you in the direction or connect you to folks. I think there's probably other people today that are on the call that can probably maybe chime in as well with opportunities that they have at their institutions. But maybe for time's sake, well, I guess what I would say to you, Matthew, is that probably the future is bright for you if you have an interest in One Health and incorporating kind of aquatics with everything else. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities right now, and I think those opportunities are only going to grow. And that's what I find almost every country I go in and we work with people, this idea of One Health and this concept. And some of them are further along and have a lot of, you know, strong programs already in it. And the ones that don't, they're looking to start a program. So I think you're very well situated for having many options when you finish your degree program. whether that to continue on in a different, PhD program or to continue on in a professional manner, you've got a lot of opportunity in front of you. So yeah, I think there's a lot there, and certainly reach out. Happy to put you in touch with folks. Hopefully there's some folks putting some stuff in the chat of what they're doing, so you have some other names as well. But yeah, future is bright for you, Matthew.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna be sure to reach out to you because I work at Mississippi State too. So maybe we can have like a meeting one day if you're okay with that.
Perfect. Let's grab lunch.
Cool. Thank you. And if anyone else wants to reach out to me too, I can put my email in the chat. I love advice and learning from people. So
Yeah,
thank you.
Matthew, I mean, real quick, I'll just echo what Steven said, but through my experience, and I think I can speak for just about everybody that's in the on the chat that kind of here and established that yeah, cold calls, cold emails, etc. If you have an opportunity to introduce yourself at a meeting or a mixer or some along those lines, don't be shy. Reach out to people, and you never know. I know I've got one student right now that I hadn't even advertised for a position yet. She just happened to cold email me a week before we added, and we set up the interviews before we even had to put it out, and she ended up being a really good fit. So certainly that doesn't always work, but to Steven's point, if you put out 50, you throw 50 lines in the water, there's a good chance of getting a bite on one. So just be diligent about it, and don't, put yourself out there.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and thanks for the presentation, Stephen. We're going to have to call it a day right there.